You are sitting in a cave. The air is damp and cold. Outside, rain is falling. It has been falling for 3 days. Not a thunderstorm. Just a steady, gray drizzle that turns the world into mud. Your fire is struggling. You fed it the last dry branch 2 hours ago. Now you are feeding it wet wood that smokes more than it burns. The smoke stings your eyes and fills your lungs. Your stomach is empty. The hunter went out this morning and has not returned. Your children are shivering in the corner. You pull your animal skin cloak tighter around your shoulders. It is soaked through. You can feel the cold water seeping down your back. Your teeth are chattering, and the rain shows no sign of stopping. This is the moment you realize something terrible. You are completely at the mercy of the last morning. Was the last time rain felt like a threat to you, and feel it as soaked stings your sign. The word shoulder sign tear show la. Rain is an inconvenience. You check the forecast. You grab an umbrella. You complain about traffic. Maybe you cancel your plans and stay home with a cup of tea. But for your ancestors, rain was something entirely different. It was an existential threat. A few days of continuous rain could mean the difference between life and death. Not metaphorically, literally. Let that sink in for a moment. A 2017 study by Dr. Richard Wrangham at Harvard University demonstrated that the control of fire was the single most important technological breakthrough in human prehistory, precisely because it was the only reliable defense against prolonged wet cold stress. Without fire, you could not survive a week of rain in most climates. With fire, you could survive almost anything. But keeping fire alive through days of rain was a challenge that required more intelligence than making the fire itself. Let me take you deep into the story of rain and human survival. We are going to explore 12 surprising ways that rain shaped our species, from the invention of roofs to the birth of storytelling, from the first waterproof clothing to the psychology of cabin fever. By the time we are done, you will never look at a rainy day the same way again. Let us start with the most urgent problem. Fire. Fire is fragile. It needs 3 things to survive: oxygen, fuel, and dryness. Take away any one of those 3, and the fire dies. In a rainstorm, dryness is exactly what you lose first. So how did prehistoric humans keep fire alive through days of rain? The answer is more sophisticated than you might imagine. Archaeological evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows that humans were controlling fire as early as 1 million years ago. But controlling fire is different from maintaining it in wet conditions. When rain came, ancient humans had to become expert fire engineers. They built rock-lined hearths that raised the fire off the saturated ground. They created windbreaks from animal skins, stretched between wooden poles. They stored dry tinder in waterproof containers, made from animal bladders and intestines. They learned to split wet logs open to find the dry heartwood hiding inside. They developed fire drills and fire plows that could ignite fresh flames even in damp conditions. A 2112 study by Dr. Francesco D'Errico at the University of Bordeaux found that early humans in southern Africa used fire-hardened wood tools as early as 1,000 years ago, suggesting they had mastered the art of maintaining high-temperature fires in wet environments. This was not simple knowledge. It required planning, foresight, and a deep understanding of combustion. Physics. Your ancestors were amateur meteorologists, and fire engineers rolled into one. Now let me ask you to think about the first roof. Not the first house, not the first wall. Just something over your head to keep the water off. The earliest evidence of a constructed shelter comes from Terra Amata in Nice, France. Here, archaeologists have found traces of a hut built 380 years ago by Homo heidelbergensis. The structure was simple. Wooden branches braced against each other in a teepee shape, covered with animal skins, and weighted down with stones at the base. It was not beautiful by modern standards, but it kept the rain out. Here is what makes this discovery remarkable. That hut was built 380,000 years before the invention of agriculture. It was built $350 years before the first permanent human settlements. It was built by a species that was not even fully modern human yet. And yet they understood the fundamental principle that shelter from rain was worth the enormous effort of construction. A 2010 study by Dr. Paola Villa at the University of Colorado analyzed these early shelters and concluded that they required coordinated group effort, division of labor between men and women, and the ability to plan for future weather conditions. In short, rain forced our ancestors to become architects. Every time it rained, they learned something new about keeping water out. Those lessons accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. Eventually, they led to roofs that could span entire communities, then walls that could block the wind, then windows that could let in light while keeping out rain, then cities. Let me take you to the Blombos Cave in South Africa. 77,000 years ago, someone sat in this cave while rain pounded the entrance. They could not hunt, they could not gather, they could not travel. So they picked up a piece of ochre, a soft red stone, and began to scratch geometric patterns into it with a stone point. Those cross-hatched patterns are the oldest known abstract designs ever made by humans. They are not food, they are not tools, they are pure symbolic expression. Art. Why did they make art? One compelling theory, proposed by Dr. Christopher Henshielwood at the University of Bergen, is that prolonged periods of forced inactivity due to bad weather created the mental space for symbolic thinking. When you cannot hunt, cannot gather, cannot travel anywhere, your mind turns inward. You start to think about patterns, about meaning, about representation. You start to create. A 2011 paper in the Journal of Human Evolution confirmed that the ochre processing workshop at Blombos Cave was used repeatedly over thousands of years, suggesting that this was not a one-time event, but a tradition passed down through generations. Rainy day art became a cultural practice. Here is a question you have probably never considered. Some of the most important innovations in human history were likely invented on rainy days. Think about it. The needle, used for sewing waterproof clothing from animal hides, required hours of focused attention to carve from bone. The first buttons and toggles for fastening wet cloaks needed experimentation to get right. The technique for curing animal hides to make them water-resistant through smoking and fat tanning was discovered through trial and error. The first coiled baskets, which could hold water, were the result of patient weaving. All of these technologies required something that rainy days provided in abundance: uninterrupted time. When the weather kept you indoors, you had hours to tinker, experiment, and refine. Rain, in this sense, was not an obstacle to innovation, it was a catalyst. A 2014 paper by Dr. Lambros Malafouras at the University of Oxford argued that material engagement, the hands-on manipulation of materials, is the primary driver of human cognitive evolution. And what better time for material engagement than when you are stuck inside with nothing to do? Now let us talk about something you cannot hold in your hands. Stories. Rainy days were the original podcast before books, before screens, before written language of any kind. Stories were told around the fire while rain drummed on the roof. A 2015 paper by Dr. Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford suggests that storytelling evolved as a primary social bonding mechanism, specifically during the long, inactive evenings and rainy days when hunter-gatherer groups were confined together. Language, in this view, was not just a tool for hunting coordination. It was a tool for surviving boredom, for maintaining social cohesion when you could not go anywhere, for transmitting survival knowledge to the next generation. Think about what a rainy day story session looked like. The elders would recount the great floods of the past, turning real geological events into legendary narratives. The hunters would describe animal behaviors they had observed, teaching the young ones what to look for. The women would share plant knowledge, which roots were edible, which leaves had medicinal properties, which berries were poisonous. These were not entertainment. They were survival education disguised as storytelling. The children who paid attention during rainy day stories were more likely to survive. The ones who did not died. Natural selection favored good listeners. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever been stuck indoors for 3 straight days because of weather? Maybe during a snowstorm, maybe during a hurricane, maybe just a really bad week of winter rain. Do you remember how you felt? Restless, irritable, a little depressed. That feeling has a name. It is called cabin fever, and it is not a modern invention. Your brain needs variety to function properly. It needs visual stimulation, social interaction, physical activity, and exposure to natural light. When rain takes all of those things away, your brain responds with a cascade of stress hormones. Your cortisol levels rise, your mood drops, you become more anxious and less patient. A 2016 study by Dr. Mark Q. Taiman at the University of Oulu in Finland found that prolonged periods of heavy cloud cover and rainfall were directly linked to increased rates of depression and seasonal affective disorder. This is not a psychological weakness. It is a biological response that evolved. Because for most of human history, bad weather was genuinely dangerous. Your brain was telling you to move, to find better shelter, to prepare for the worst. But here's the strange paradox. Your ancestors felt the same stress, but they had a completely different relationship with it. They did not expect to be comfortable all the time. They accepted that rain meant sitting still, doing nothing, waiting. They did not reach for a phone or a screen, they reached for each other. There is direct archaeological evidence that rainy days were the primary time for social learning in prehistoric groups. A 2020 study by Dr. Michelle Langley at Griffith University in Australia analyzed the spatial organization of campsites from 400,000 years ago. She found that hearth areas were designed specifically for group gathering during bad weather. The hearths were larger than necessary for cooking. The seating areas were more spacious. Arranged in circles, the shelters were oriented to block wind and rain while allowing light and ventilation. Inside these rain-ready shelters, a structured social world emerged. Children learned tool-making skills from adults, watching and imitating as their parents shaped stone points and bone needles. Young hunters studied maps of animal migration patterns drawn in the ash on the cave floor. Elders passed down knowledge about which caves flooded and which stayed dry, which trees provided the best firewood even when wet, which animals were active in the rain. This was not passive entertainment. It was school. And it meant every day that the sky opened up. Now let us zoom out and look at the big picture. Rain did not just shape our daily lives, it shaped the entire course of human migration. Seasonal monsoons have guided human movement for hundreds of thousands of years. When the rains came to North Africa every year, they transformed the Sahara Desert into a green savanna, filled with rivers, lakes, and game animals. Archaeologists call these periods the African humid periods. During these wet phases, humans spread across the continent. When the rain stopped and the Sahara dried up again, populations were trapped in isolated pockets. A 2013 study by Dr. Jessica Tierney at the University of Arizona analyzed lake sediment cores from East Africa and found that periods of increased rainfall correlated directly with periods of technological innovation and population expansion. Wet periods meant more food, more people, and more cultural exchange. Dry periods meant isolation, starvation, and in some cases, extinction. This pattern repeated itself around the world. The first humans to reach Australia had to cross open ocean, a journey that was only possible because of monsoon winds and ocean currents. The colonization of the Americas was shaped by the weather patterns of the Ice Age, when lower sea levels exposed land bridges that were passable only during certain seasons. Every human migration was a dance with the rain. But here is the darker side of this story. Rain was also a weapon of extinction. Imagine you are a Neanderthal living in Europe. 5,000 years ago, you have survived the winter. You have stored food. You have maintained your fire. But then the spring rains come, and they do not stop. The rivers flood. The game animals move to higher ground. Far from your hunting territory, your food stores begin to rot in the damp. Your children develop respiratory infections from the cold and wet conditions. One by one, members of your group die. Not from starvation, not from violence, from rain. A 2014 study by Dr. William Davies at the University of Southampton examined Neanderthal extinction patterns and found a strong correlation between periods of extreme weather fluctuations and population decline. Neanderthals were adapted to cold, dry conditions. When the climate became wetter and more unpredictable, they could not adapt fast enough. Modern humans, who had better shelter construction techniques, more sophisticated clothing, and more flexible social structures, survived. This is not a comfortable thought, but it needs to be said. Our ancestors survived because they were better at dealing with rain. Now, let me take you to the other side of the world, the rainforests of Southeast Asia. Here, rain was not an occasional problem, it was a daily reality. Some parts of Indonesia receive over 4,000 millimeters of rain per year. That is enough water to flood a one-story house every 12 months. How did humans survive in these extreme wet environments? They evolved specialized cultural adaptations. The building of houses on stilts kept the living floor above the waterlogged ground. The use of bamboo pipes channeled clean drinking water from mountain springs. The development of quick-drying clothing from plant fibers prevented skin infections. the deep knowledge of which plants were edible in heavy rain. A 2018 study by Dr. Amy Carba at the University of Washington documented how the Patek people of Malaysia use more than 200 different plant species for food, medicine, and shelter materials during the monsoon season. This knowledge is passed down orally across generations. It is a library of survival information, encoded not in books but in stories, songs, and practices. Let me offer you the most surprising idea of this entire video. Some archaeologists believe that the invention of the roof triggered a cascade of social changes that eventually led to civilization itself. Think about what a roof does. It creates a space that is separated from nature, a space where you control the environment, where it is dry when it is wet outside, where it is warm when it is cold outside, where you can store food without it rotting in the damp, where you can raise children without them being exposed to the elements, where you can build a fire that will not be extinguished by rain. That roofed space became the home. The home became the villa as well. Ian Hodder at Stanford University, based on 3 decades of excavations at Çatalhöyük in Turkey, argued that the transition to settled life was driven primarily by the need for reliable shelter rather than by agriculture. The evidence suggests that people built permanent houses before they farmed. They built roofs before they planted crops. Rain, in this reading of history, is the hidden architect of civilization. Now let us talk about what we have lost. You live in a world where rain has been completely tamed. You have central heating, air conditioning, waterproof jackets, umbrellas, cars with roofs, buildings with drainage systems, accurate weather forecasts, and emergency services. You have never, in your entire life, been truly trapped by rain. You have never faced the choice between wet wood and no fire. You have never watched your child shiver and wondered if they would survive the night. But your brain still carries the memory of that fear. That is why the sound of rain is deeply relaxing to you. That is why you find comfort in the rhythm of water on a roof. That is why you feel cozy when you are inside. And it is raining outside. Your brain knows that rain is dangerous, and it knows that you are safe. The contrast is pleasurable. A 2021 study by Dr. Cassandra Gould Van Praag at the University of Sussex used fMRI scans to show that the sound of rain activates the default mode network in the brain, the neural network associated with introspection, memory consolidation, and emotional processing. Your brain, hearing rain, does not just relax, it remembers. It remembers a time when rain meant survival. It remembers a time when every rainy day was a test of your ingenuity, your patience, and your community. Here is the truth that nobody talks about. You are not just a modern human living in an artificial world made of concrete and glass. You are a prehistoric survivor living in a body and a brain that were shaped by millions of years of weather. Your brain was designed by the rain. Your social structures were refined by the rain. Your most important technologies were invented because of the rain. Your cities were organized around the rain, and somewhere, deep in your genetic memory, you still know how to sit still and wait for the storm to pass. You do not need to check your phone. You do not need to find something to do. You just need to be present with your people in the dry space that your ancestors created for you. The rain will stop. It always stops. And when it does, you will walk out into a world that is cleaner, greener, and more alive than before. You will see the puddles reflecting the sky. You will smell the wet earth, a smell so ancient that your brain processes it in the oldest parts of your limbic system. You will feel the sun on your skin, and you will remember that sunlight is a gift, and you will know, without knowing how you know, that you have done this before 1,000 times, 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Your survival did not happen despite the rain, it happened because of the rain. You are the species that learned to dance with the storm.